Live on a Friday night. I hope everybody's doing well. We're waiting on the homie Green Star Grower. For some of y'all might not know this cat. His name's Drew. Awesome kid. I want to say the first time we met was Denver at one of the events of some sort. But yeah, man, awesome dude, grows dank weed. Hope everybody had a happy new year. The very best part of it was we left that last one in the past. It's gone. No more 2022. It's over. It's done. We're gonna move the fuck on. There we go. Hit that join request button. There we go.
What are you talking about? I could do that twice every time.
What up?
What?
I'm chilling, brother. How are you, man? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Not bad at all, man. Not bad at all.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, it has been a minute. Where you got? You're in Georgia now?
Yeah, I'm all over the place these days, man.
Where?
I spent time on the East Coast. We spent time on the West Coast. Kind of back and forth, you know.
Nice.
Like, it's busy and complicated, you know.
Yeah.
But just chilling, man. Yeah, I mean, you know, to be honest with you, probably right after the last time I saw you, you know, 17.
Yeah.
I started doing the seed thing full time.
Right.
And, yeah, man, it's been awesome.
Oh,
you know, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. One of the things we should probably talk about is that biochem. Because
right.
that came from the grow we worked at together.
Yep.
Funny enough. And
I love that strain.
bro, it was one of those that, like, when I kind of had that opportunity of, like, I could kind of get, you know, whatever, and that was the only one that I was like, that one.
Yeah.
That motherfucker right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything that I've made with it, stupid. Just stupid. Just stupid. Yeah, like Redeems, Blackout Truffle. I know there's 3 or 4 more, but yeah, dude, everything I made with that strain was amazing.
That's dope.
And so then as soon as I started running it, like, I came to find out it was a pretty common, like, it had gotten around Colorado.
Yeah.
They weren't the only dispensary that had it, you know?
Yeah. Nah,
but yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, super chemi. I think it might have been right after you had stopped working there. We got this grape crypt from Green Man, Corey.
Oh yeah.
He gave me. I got like a flat of cuts from him, and that grape crypt is still one of my favorite strains I've ever grown. It was so grapey, like grape Jolly Rancher, with just the most insane gas on the back end of it.
That place had a couple of, like, you know, if I'd had my hand and just been able to grab like 4 or 5 different strains,
right.
Like, there were a couple they had that I was like, yeah, it's, you know, they had that Cinderella 99 that would just throw like
just
huge tops. And then they had like, I keep seeing pictures because they pop up in my Facebook from when we were working there. So I'll see them like every now and again. One of the other one, they had like a Venice Beach Afghani that I never understood anything about or where it came from, but I remember it being dank, like dank.
Skunky, yeah, it was super skunky. Yeah, that Mob Boss threw some fucking colas.
Yeah, that's another one of those, what the fuck was that? was another Tang cross, wasn't it?
So yeah,
something like that. Yeah, there was a handful of them that we ran that were real heavy Colorado dispensary staples while I was there that were dank, like super dank. The Mob Boss, I want to say the Upgrade, maybe I'm wrong on that. There was 2 or 3 that I remember running around that time that were like similarly related or had either come from the same pack of seeds, you know? And like there's so many of those strains. Like when I was working, we'll do this diplomatically. When I was working for another dispensary, not the one we worked at, but one I had worked at previously. When I left, obviously things weren't super amicable, so it was one of those where it was just kind of like grab any cuts I could get on the way out the door. So I'd have something to start when this inevitably failed and the whole thing fell apart. And they were screwing me and had been screwing me for a while. And that was the place that fired me because I wouldn't spray Eagle 20 on their weed. And then later got in trouble for spraying Eagle 20 on it. Long story short, there were cuts that I left that dispensary with that today I wish I still had, because they had that Tiger's Milk, they had the Orange Ghost, they had like, I mean, shit today that, bro, I don't even know if it still exists. Like that Orange Ghost, I've asked Obsolete himself and been like, do you still have this? Does this exist? And he's like, you know. And then I know there was still a place in Boulder not too long ago, maybe that was running it. But you know how that goes. Man. So many of those places are so tight with their genetics that it can be really tough, unless you just happen to know somebody that works there, or it's like one of the places that's, once again, man, I keep having to bite my tongue, and I'm kind of realizing this is going to have to happen. This is how this is going to have to be, because I don't want to shit on a dozen dispensaries and then get cease and desist or pissed off people. But to be fair, most of the places that you and I have worked, not together, but in general, don't exist anymore.
Yeah, no, not at all.
90% of them don't exist anymore. So, but that doesn't mean the owner of that place didn't go open another place and would get super pissed off if we were shitting on the last place. So I'll mind my tongue on that. But you've worked for...
Grown a little bit, bro. Shit.
And listen, man, like if you're ever going to have a future, I've come to realize you got to burn bridges very lightly. And you never really know. Like, I run a business now, so it's a little different. I will admit, it's a little different. There was a time and a place where I just set matches to every one of these places, and have done that, you know. But yeah, absolutely, grown a little bit. But you're one of the few people I can think of that's probably worked at as many different commercial grow operations as I have.
Yeah.
You know, and you've worked at a couple that I probably was glad. Once I heard stories, I was glad I didn't work at.
For sure. For sure. The very first place I worked at in 2015 when I moved down to Denver was like 5 tiers of, it was like 100,000 square feet. We drove around.
That's the one you know everybody else that I know through, correct? Yeah, the big one. Yeah. Because I know coming after I worked like the first 2 spots, every place I worked at after that, I worked with people from that grow that you probably knew from your time with that grow.
Fucked up because like everyone that worked there was so cool, and like I'm still super close with almost everyone that I worked at in that facility.
Yeah.
But the manager,
just all super cool kids. Yeah,
it's sad. They could have. They could be doing great things still, but they wouldn't listen to any of their growers, and everybody just ended up leaving.
You know, it was another place that was not run by weed people.
Yeah.
There's another place that was run by money people, real estate people, whatever it was, money that they had acquired to get into the weed game. Yep. They weren't weed people. Yep. And so, yeah, man, that's the one thing that you've probably seen in a lot of these places is that I don't know that I ever worked in a commercial grow for weed people, or even people that were into weed like you or I am, like weed lifers, people that, you know, maybe they weren't growers their whole lives, but they were hustlers, or, you know, there was some weed thing that tied them to the business. But no, 99% of the people at the very top were people that weren't involved with weed, just saw weed as a quick buck, just saw it as an easy way to, you know, make quick money, and then quickly realized that ain't how it works. That ain't how it works. I never met a motherfucker that was at the top that was making millions and millions and millions of dollars off of weed. Maybe that's out there. But you really get into like the bigger grows that I worked at that can then grow enough weed to cover that had such ridiculous overheads.
Right.
That your margins are still super thin.
And then
you're just not making the trillions of dollars people think.
Yeah, no, not at all. Between that and taxes and how shitty people were building grows back then, also, like there was no way to grow weed efficiently in those warehouses that we were in
well,
Denver.
Dude, everything in Denver, especially, none of the buildings that I ever worked in were purpose built for weed.
No.
Now, I know towards the end of, 17, 18 or so, there was one that was built. It was a big name seed company that opened to grow, and it was supposedly purpose built for weed. But the 3,000 other grows that were in Denver were car garages, warehouses for lumber. I worked in one that was like an old auto body shop. I worked in another one that literally they sold auto parts, and it was like a warehouse for auto parts. None of them were built for weed. So none of them were built for the fact that in Colorado, it can go from 100 plus in the summer to -12, -15 in the winter, and that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Funny story about that big building that was purpose built for weed by the seed company. Someone told them that they could just use water in their chillers for their HVAC instead of glycol, and they fried the entire $5 million HVAC system and were down for like a year.
Bro, I tell you a funny one. I worked in a hash lab, a solventless hash lab that will remain unnamed. We had a swamp cooler.
Yep.
I had to make my face say that with a straight face.
Yep.
We were drying hash in the summertime with a swamp cooler.
Yeah, man. Some crazy shit went down for sure.
Bro, and it's just because these were people who just wanted to get rich off weed. They weren't people who just loved this shit and would be doing it. If they weren't making $1, they would be doing some other fucking shit.
Yep.
But the people that you find who never really get the kind of credit they deserve, when you go into a dispensary and you actually see some good-looking weed on a shelf, I don't think most people realize the difficulty level of that on a commercial scale.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to grow 10 nice plants under a couple lights in a tent and baby the shit out of them, and nobody comes around them, and nobody's there, and nobody's poking at them.
Yep.
That's real easy. But to do that with thousands of plants under tons of lights in a big grow is a whole beast of its own. And most people don't realize you can still grow dank fucking weed. You can grow the best looking weed and then throw it in a trim machine and dry that shit wet, and it's still fucking mids. It's still garbage. That's the Colorado way, was that because it's so easy to dry shit there, it's so dry.
Right.
Colorado Cure, 4-day dry, run that fucker through a machine first, it's ready to go in a couple days.
Yep.
They don't give a fuck if it's mids. Somebody's gonna buy it.
Yeah, no.
Somebody's gonna buy it.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's not impossible, and it's really not that hard, honestly, to grow good weed in a big facility. And people are always saying, "Oh, if your rooms are 2,000 square feet or more, you're only growing mids," and that's not true. But it 1,000% comes down to your dry and your cure process.
I will say, the one thing about the place that we did work together at was that the whole check-in, like come in, scrub out, like all of that, I had never seen in another commercial grow.
Yeah.
And I didn't see. Now, I'm not saying it didn't exist,
right,
but I don't remember there being massive problems in that grow. Like, it wasn't like you come in and there's a patch of webs one day or huge patches of mildew. That grow was pretty fucking clean. It wasn't a massive grow, But for the size of it, that's a pretty good feat, man. I've walked into smaller, much nastier grows in that state.
Exactly.
Like so many.
Like a little over 20,000 square feet of canopy. And I mean, there were patches of PM in there because you can't really get away from that in Colorado,
yeah.
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't
anything.
It wasn't crazy. They weren't. You didn't have tons of loss. Like that wasn't a huge thing, which I had seen in other grows where, you know, if they just couldn't clean it up, then it was just, you know, somebody lost, and it is what it is. And I don't know, but yeah. No, you guys. That is the one thing about that grow that like. The in and out process, the fact that we always had clean gear, the fact that we weren't in our shoes from fucking home. With everybody in the state of Colorado has their own grow, so literally everybody's coming in and out of grows every day, and everybody's got the same problems. It's like the same 8 STDs. Everybody just passes around, and we all just know that we're passing them around, and we just do it. And it was so gross in the sense that like when you would go into commercial grows, those clothes almost always went in the trash. And like if it weren't a grow like that where I worked at and I knew what was going on, like if I'm touring a grow, 8 times out of 10 I wore almost clothes that are just going in the garbage because I wasn't bringing whatever the fuck it was in that grow into my grow to just make more problems for myself.
Absolutely. I remember one of the grows I worked at right before I started at that place that we were at together was a tiny little medical grow. And they had the worst mite infestation I've ever seen in my life. And, I mean, like, full-on webs on top of colas, like webs between colas.
And this is after the state had come in and kind of made regs for spray. So, like, by this point, the only thing you could really use was, like, fucking neem oil.
Or burn that shit down. But, yeah, they hired some consultant. They hired some consultant that is very well known by people in the industry and people on Instagram especially, and he hooked up a garden hose and just started spraying all the plants and was like, this is how we're going to get rid of them. And I was like, yeah, I think this is my last day.
Dude. I had 1 or 2 of those where like I did one day and then I just went, yeah, dog, this ain't how this is going to go. But hey, I joked one of the last episodes I did, I worked in a grow. I'd call it, I did about 4 hours. And I walk in, it was a grow that had been licensed by a big musician. And in Colorado at this time, there was only 1 or 2, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a rapper. So it was a big name musician that had his own line in Colorado. And I walked in, and they had a patch of plants in the corner. I don't know if that had just become like the mite corner, but it was a super highway of webbing. And I walked around, I saw bugs I couldn't identify. In 20 years in every grow book that's ever existed, there were bugs in this grow that I couldn't identify, and they were eating plants. So they were obviously, you know, I talked to the kid for a little while, and he was telling me, he's like, I just got an offer to go work at like a bigger grow. And I kind of talked to him because it was one I was kind of familiar with. And I was like looking around and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, man. It's going to be a little more work, but it can't be any worse than what you're dealing with here. This is the nastiest thing I've ever seen in my life. These clothes are going home. I'm going to bleach myself with just bottles of bleach and just straight in the shower because I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing here, but this ain't commercial weed cultivation, dog. I've seen nicer closet grows that can at least keep the bugs under control. Like, and like I say, a Colorado closet grow is 4 to 10 lights, for those that don't know. Like, when you casually think of a fucking grow, a closet grow, you think of your closet and your, you know, a light and your little... Now, the Colorado closet grows a 4 to 10 lighter. It's the ones that slip under the nose of the cops every day. There's thousands of them out there. And that's usually, you know, 90% of the weed that you see on the East Coast or on the, you know, is usually coming from some Colorado closet grow. And, yeah, I mean, dude, I've seen Colorado closet grows that was about the same. This wasn't a huge grow. You know, you just kind of look at it and you go, how could you not? What the fuck are you guys doing? Like, and once again, it's a combination of wasn't properly built grow, Nobody knows what they're doing. There are no weed people here. Somebody leaves them a recipe of what to mix and what to put in the res and what to feed,
Right.
and they do it. That's it. That they don't know what's going on. They've never run plants of their own. And dude, as many great kids as I met in the weed business, I met so many that were there for a year and they had a good time growing some weed, kind of came to the realization that it's a lot of work. It's fucking farming. It's not, everybody's not puffing joints in a commercial grow.
Yep.
That was the most disappointing thing I found out when I got to Colorado. I mean, I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I did smoke weed in every grow I ever worked in, I think, but except for maybe one or two. But like, yeah, that's beside the point. A whole different discussion. It wasn't a casual. We weren't just walking around the fucking reservoir with fucking joints in our mouths, you know?
The very first place I worked at was up in Greeley, and they had a.
I did one in Greeley too.
Really? That's
yeah, for about 8 days.
Was it the big company in Greeley? Like the one that's in Denver and Greeley?
Yes, maybe. I don't, bro. It's been a little while. That's a small town, so there's not too many There's not too many dispensaries there.
There's only 5, I think. They might have more.
Yeah.
But this is one of the smaller ones. They were just up there, and they had a shipping container just sitting in the parking lot, and that was like the smoke station because they didn't have any cameras or anything in there. So they had flies in it. So like we would go out there and smoke a joint or smoke a bowl or whatever for 5 minutes, and then come walking out with a pot. Like we went in there to get another pot or some shit.
Yeah. Oh, bro, I got a good shipping container story. So like this is so funny that you brought up shipping container. The first grow that I worked for a grow in Colorado Springs. And at the time, they were the only outdoor grow that I know of that had a license.
Yeah.
And they literally planted on the side of this mountain, which in Colorado freezes and then all that just accumulates in the soil.
Yeah.
They just planted plants in the ground. This grow was a joke. But I was running their trim when I started there. Like I went from trim guy to trim manager in like 2 days. They were like, you know what you're doing, you're in charge. I'm like, all right, cool. So we go to move grows. Like we had just opened another grow, and so they were able to do a transfer and move product between grows legally. And so we did a U-Haul full of wheat.
Oh wow.
It was the last year's harvest.
Yeah.
So I had heard stories of a shipping container, and I was like, tell me more about the shipping container. Like where I've been all over the property, I haven't seen it.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, you're standing on it. It's underneath the ground.
Oh.
It's buried, backed in.
Yeah.
And that's where they stored last year's crop.
Wow.
So you can imagine what them bins looked like, bro. Everything that was dense or indica was just bombed with botrytis, just bud mold, top to bottom, just every bit of it. And I told him when I started, I'm like, listen, man, I handle loss like this. If it's nasty, goes in the trash. Like, if I'm the trim manager, I'm not selling people fucking shit that's covered in mold. I don't give a fuck what the fuck you guys say. I'll set it aside and you guys can argue about it, or I can throw it straight in the trash. But that's loss. That's waste.
Yeah.
We move the whole U-Haul. Like the whole U-Haul. It was actually the funniest thing because it was the biggest transfer of weed. I had never moved a load of an entire U-Haul, floor to ceiling of weed bins. Like it was, I had moved a lot of weed, but it was unique even for me. Like it was a lot, and it was all sanctioned. We had paperwork. This was like everything was legal. It was super weird. But yeah, I wasn't at the storage container place for long.
I don't blame.
It was another one where like then they moved us to the country. Like we were down in like Pueblo West.
Damn.
Then it was like Pueblo. And like we were in Colorado Springs, so it was like 2 hours to get to work every day. Yeah. And I worked the night shift for them, so we worked like 8 or 9 in the evening until like 2 in the morning.
Oh wow!
which was so sketchy, bro. Working at Pueblo West in the middle of the night like that. Before you could have pistols and shit, like you couldn't have guns around your grow, nothing like that. So when I moved there, it was the Wild West, and it was just trim up, bro.
That is crazy down there. Those are some fucking the worst kind of rednecks down there.
Yeah. So I got a question, man. So like one of the things that I was curious, because you've done some work out in Vegas and shit, how different and in what ways is it different than the Colorado commercial market?
It's a lot smaller, a lot smaller. I think there's only like
even still today, because they've been legal for a few years now, right?
Yeah, I think there's still only like 65 or 70 cultivations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of it is in Vegas, and then there's a couple like up in Reno.
In the outskirts. Yeah.
So it's a lot smaller. I think on the whole, the quality is pretty similar. There's a couple of really fire grows out here. There's a place called Green Life Productions that purpose built an indoor no-till facility.
Oh, nice.
They put out some fire. Yeah. So they have
consistently for a while now.
Do what?
Consistently, like they're churning out good weed.
Yeah, they're on like the
That's awesome.
30th cycle in the same soil, and they're putting out fire. They have the best flower that I've smoked here in Vegas, and then they do solventless from that also. Awesome. Their solventless is fucking quality. But then, there's like the Planet 13s and the Flower Ones that are just huge, massive grows that don't really follow the SOPs that they're supposed to be following, and just it's
just tourist weed. Yeah. Tourists to go smoke that shit. They don't give a fuck.
Exactly.
They just don't give a fuck. Yeah.
One of the worst parts is most of the sales are going to tourists, and most of the tourists are only buying pre-rolls, so people can just grow some boof, whatever, roll it up in a joint, and
we could do a whole episode on pre-roll stories. We could do an hour. We'll get the wife. Yeah. We'll get the wife, and between the three of us, we could do an hour. She's probably laughing her ass off right now that I just said that. We could do an hour on pre-roll stories, bro.
Yeah, man.
Don't buy them pre-rolls and them dispos, guys. No. I don't know what you think is in that. It ain't what you think it is, bro.
I promise you that they're using all A1 buds in there. They are not doing that.
Nah, bro, because here's the way that works, right? Buds get sold as buds. Yep. Nobody grinding up fucking weed in the weed industry because there's so much shake and just, spent product that people I've seen it all. I'm telling you, we could do an hour on pre-rolls, just on pre-rolls, on why you don't want to fucking buy pre-rolls from anywhere. I don't care what they tell you. Nobody puts AAA weed in pre-rolls for anything other than photo ops and for advertisements. Yep. You don't do that. That's just not how the weed business works. 99.99999% of them pre-rolls, it's got cat hair in it. They swept that shit up off the floor. They had people sweeping up when they were rolling. It's just all the nasty shit you could imagine goes into pre-rolls because they know people are going to buy it. They know they're going to pay for it. And of all the things that you sell in a dispensary, the highest markup is on pre-rolls. You're making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per pound selling just scraps to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all those places where there's tourists and they know people are going to come in and just buy weed up and they don't give a fuck what they're buying, they're just going to they're going to throw anything into those joints they possibly can. Like anything.
For sure. All the bottom nugs are getting sprayed by their fucked up irrigation systems and hand waterers that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Dude, the whole remediation industry that's blown up since I saw you last. Like that wasn't really a thing in 2016, 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
After that, like the whole, we can make your shitty weed just a little bit less shitty. That whole industry is brand new.
Yeah.
It's brand new.
I think that really came along because of the pesticide regulations that they did.
Well, you're absolutely right. Because all these companies go, well, we grew it. What are we supposed to do with it?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to smoke it.
Right. We can't lose all this money. Yeah, that's wild.
Dude, my only experience with Vegas was that, like, right after the shooting, like right after the big Vegas situation, like we kind of do the death tourism occasionally, and we'll just like, there's some weird stuff. Now cheap flights are cheap, and we can go stay in Vegas for Thanksgiving weekend for like $8 a night at the MGM.
Yep.
Like, overlooking the site. It was a little weird, I'm gonna be honest with you, but we went to just random big dispensary. We were like literally asked the concierge, like, what's the big dispensary? And they were like, go to this one. I couldn't tell you what it was called. They were supposedly had cookies and something else. And like, I went, I had to give it, I had everything I needed. So it was an exploratory mission.
Yeah.
So we literally go check everything out, and I didn't buy anything.
Yeah.
Like, it was a lot of like things in little viewing windows that you could look at, but you couldn't look at or touch any of the product. And so I was like, yeah, that's not how you buy weed. Like, it's just not, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, if I can't smell it, I'm not buying it. I don't give a shit. Like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
And so whoever was with us, I think, bought some edibles or something, and it was just, you know.
Yeah.
But I want to say this was like within the first year that they had gone legal. And so a lot of it was still brand new. I want to say they had one of the big blue and white logoed companies, supposedly. And I was like, well, where's that stuff at? And they're like, oh, well, that's the stuff that you can't look at or purchase. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I work in the weed industry. Like, that's not how this transaction goes down. Like, if you want to show me, I mean, you can even hold it near me. I don't need to like stick my face in it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because let's be honest, if you open a jar and I can't smell it from me to you, I'm not leaving here with it anyway.
Absolutely.
Why would we waste our time?
Yeah.
Like,
that's one of the questions I hate the most is, what's your favorite dispensary? Because I don't have one and I don't go to them.
Here's what's funny. By the time I knew better, I had kind of started to follow a few companies around that I knew people that worked in, and would be like, no, seriously, it's pretty anal. Like, it's like, our grow is clean, and and I'm like, listen, man, if the people that actually grow the weed are honest with you when we're all sitting around just having a good time, because that's when we all talk like this.
Right.
Like you or I, where we're like, oh, you ain't going to believe what I saw these guys do. Like, if somebody's really like, no, literally, our grow is clean. We eat off the floors. Like, we don't, and then I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk.
Yep.
And there are a couple grows like that, mostly concentrate companies.
Right.
There was a couple, like one or two that did organic flower really well in Colorado.
Yep.
There's a whole other discussion to be had, man, about, terpenes at altitude, terpenes in Colorado, terpenes in Colorado compared to the East Coast, somewhere where it's ridiculously humid.
Yeah.
I spent the first few years in Colorado really wondering where the dank weed was.
Right.
Because growing up, Colorado weed had always been like Humboldt weed on tour. It was like the shit you heard about, and it's like, oh no, this shit is a little bit more dank than what you're used to getting.
Right.
Like, it's from, and you usually knew it wasn't Humboldt, but that was just a marketing technique of the day amongst the wook du jour.
Yep.
And, so it was one of those things where, like, you heard about Colorado weed, and it was supposed to be better than the rest. That was not my experience.
Yeah.
At all.
Especially from any store, really. I mean, I think when I first got out to Colorado, I was pretty unimpressed with all of the weed that I saw. And then once you hunt around a little bit and you find those growers that are taking care of their plants and know what they're actually doing, there's definitely some fire. But yeah, I honestly hadn't even thought about that, about the altitude in Colorado versus altitude in Cali. Or
So here's where it always struck me, because I'm from the East Coast. Occasionally, things from Colorado end up in places other than Colorado.
Yep.
However that happens from time to time. But there was a distinct thing that I noticed, that once you opened a jar that had been sealed in mountain air of whatever barometric pressure and whatever, now stank like hell. And so I have a couple of theories. I think one of them has to do with just how altitude affects our sensory perception.
Right.
Like, it really does fuck with you heavy, and you don't really notice it until you've been there for a while. And something like that, where you're like, dude, I swear, when I'm not like at altitude, everything smells normal, everything is normal, but there is a distinct thing that you notice from being at altitude. The other thing has to do with humidity and resin and terpenes.
Right.
So like when I had been in grows on the East Coast, where things are much more damp and much more generally humid, everything stank.
Right.
Everything stank. Everything stank. Like, get out of my car with that. Get out of here. Go. Stank. Just terrible smelling weed. But then that same weed in a different state like Colorado, where, the same strains even grown in different environments, you definitely see a massive difference in terpene production, in resin production, in overall just how it expresses itself. When you open a jar of weed, like, that was another thing that, like, growing up, if you open the jar and it didn't offend somebody, don't buy that one. Like, don't buy that, don't buy that one. Like, buy something else. Find something else to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happened. That happened occasionally. But there is a thing that, like, it's not necessarily commercial. It's not it's not necessarily how it's grown, in that I had homies, in Colorado that grew dank weed. And the people that I honestly, have a lot of respect for, that were really good small batch growers that just grew really dank weed. And that's where the best shit always is. It's where it was. It's where it's always going to be.
Yeah.
But, it really came down to all of these folks that you were meeting, the same weed you take somewhere else, and you're really going to be impressed with how much different the terpene profile is just in a different environment. Like, just popping it over, just got off the wherever you get your weed from, open the jar, and now it stinks. It was never like that in Colorado. In all the dispensaries, even when I would go to dispensaries that I respected, I knew they grew great weed, would take that same weed to the other coast, smells entirely different.
I guess
in different humid environments.
I had that because I would bring stuff with me when I would go visit my parents in Florida, and I did notice that it smelled a lot more when I would open the jar when I got to my parents' place in Florida. But then, it'd be dry. It'd be completely bone dry weed when I left Colorado, and after 2 days in Florida, it's like I have to, like, bring it out because of the humidity. So yeah, I bet the humidity does have a lot to do with that.
Well, see, one of the things that I've brought up about this, another controversial topic, I suppose, is the skunk weed disappeared. All of the skunky weed has disappeared. It's all gone. Nobody can smoke skunky weed anymore. It doesn't exist.
Right. I call bull.
Another one of the greatest myths in weed. But I think a lot of this has to do with environment. I think certain terpene profiles are going to be more expressive in certain growing conditions, especially as it relates to general humidity.
Right.
And that's something that you see in a lot of these grows in Colorado, because the goal was always to just keep it as dry as possible, most of them.
Right.
And it's like, well, it's great for making sure you don't have certain problems, but it kind of causes other problems.
Exactly.
But if you're not actively controlling the humidity while you're growing, then that's another thing that's definitely going to control overall terpene production as it relates to finished products. You know, even if we're going straight into extracts and we're extracting everything live right away,
for sure,
you know, it's still the raw terpene numbers just aren't quite the same as weed that's grown in proper humidity, that's grown in properly humid environments, controlled the entire time through drying, all the way to whatever your post-process choice is. And, you know, I think that's something that obviously right now we can talk about it as kind of just what we've observed. And it's not something we're probably ever going to have a true answer on until, you know, way, way, way more science has gotten behind testing.
right.
And we can test everything in different environments, the same strain grown in different environments, hundreds of times in different climates and different states. The aggregate of the data, once federal legalization takes over, is going to be huge, because then there will probably be a federal repository of some sort for that information. And that's what's funny now is that I was thinking to myself the other day, the most brilliant thing you could do right now, you remember when all the Phylos stuff happened and everybody was ranting and raving because they took everybody's genealogy?
Yeah.
If you were to take somehow aggregate samples from testing, from terpene testing, and you could make terpene fingerprints, true terpene fingerprints with testing data, we could actually figure out what we've lost and what's not out there.
Right.
Because if you could do those fingerprints on any strain, we could still, most of the strains of the world are still out there somewhere. The notion that there's anything is completely gone from the planet, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
You know, somebody has it in their closet, in their basement, in their grow, somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think going back to like people saying that skunk has disappeared, I think a lot of that for sure has to do with the environment that people are growing in and the amount of cuts that have been passed around and cuts of cuts that have been passed around. And
I will say some of those early heavy sativa pure skunk strains, there's a reason they're not around.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those were herm monsters. They're not made for commercial production. They were tall and lanky. You'd have to run numbers to be able to find something that might be commercially viable. Then you got to work a line to really keep it and acclimate it to growing under lights. Right. Most of those strains weren't really bred to grow under lights. Yeah. And the amount of change that we've had in the lighting industry in the last 35 years has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
So it's out there somewhere. Every profile that we've ever had is out there somewhere in a seed.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part of it, is that if you're willing to get your hands dirty and you're willing to pop seeds, every profile that's ever existed is still sitting out there somewhere. Right. It's just waiting for somebody to find the right two crosses, and the whole thing has started back over. Because one of the things that I see a lot now, and you just kind of see it with Mac, with the Miracle Alien cookies, is that like old school kind of peppery, hazy thing. So like we lost a lot of that in the discussion of haze when everything became the sweet haze. Right. And a lot of those like old school just choke your chest pepper hazes, but you're starting to see that come back in a lot of ways. You know, Mac's just one example that's been super popular, but I've seen different Mac phenos and hybrids that have a lot of that like old school kind of peppery, hazy thing going on amongst kind of other stuff.
Oh, yeah. What are you smoking on?
Banana punch, and it's stupid.
Yeah,
it rains like Tony Montana, just crystals everywhere. It's just ridiculous. As soon as it's one of those that like, you know how you find those strains and like you smoke a lot of weed like I do. You probably smoke a ton of different flavors. And you've tasted most of the major flavors. We've gotten into this and that, and, you know, citrus and gas and all that. Yeah. But then you get one and you go, man, that's got enough shit going on. I don't really know. What? What are you talking? Say what? Yeah. Huh?
That's a new combination.
I mean, it's like banana runts candy, like super banana candy, but with a coconut gas thing on the bottom.
Oh, wow.
And it just rains trikes everywhere. Just rain. It's just snows. It's ridiculous.
Awesome.
It's ridiculous. And as soon as I found it, I was like, yeah, I got to work with this. I got to work with this. I think everybody's done that with Purple Punch. Like,
Yeah.
Purple Punch is the one everybody fell in love with, and we can't really argue about it. I'm going to be honest. Some people talk about it like Blue Dream in a hushed whispers amongst people that know. But just because it doesn't, I mean, it's not by itself, it's not a profile that I think is going to just slap you in the face.
Right.
But
But
it's not super aggressive on the hybrid. So when you cross it, if you cross it with something that's just stupid, it's like, reminds me of old Sensi Star, which back to the biochem,
Yep.
you know, that Sensi Star. It's not super aggressive in the profile when you're hybridizing it, but you can cross it with something super terpy and still get that like trichomes that just fall off on your fingers and you can pick them off one at a time.
That's awesome. Here, the last garden I was in here, we had a blue cookies. It was a Santa Cruz Blue Dream crossed with, I think it was the original cookies. I think the form cut, but it had that super, super nice Blue Dream, old school Blue Dream smell and taste, but like 10 times the trichome coverage of a Blue Dream.
You'll have to come back and we'll have to do an hour on Blue Dream. We'll just do the Blue Dream hour. We'll play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
We'll play devil's advocate. One of us will talk like Blue Dream is the greatest. We've done this conversation 100 times. You and I can both have it verbatim. So we could just have the whole conversation and we'll just talk it out like we normally. Oh no, but it's 3 a light, and oh no, but my homie's got the one cut. And we could do the whole conversation. But we'll do it in long form and discuss both why people love Blue Dream
and why people hate it.
People can't stand Blue Dream. Why I think it's kind of funny that Bert Kreischer smokes Blue Dream.
Yep.
Both because it's Bert Kreischer and because it's Blue Dream. Right. And when I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Was a little ad that's like Bert Kreischer saying, oh yeah, I smoke all the time. My favorite strain's Blue Dream. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. That joke wrote itself. I don't even need to insert myself. You just told it, and it was funnier than you realized.
Yeah,
like that's the best part of it.
I didn't even know. Yeah, I made a post last year because the funny thing is I am not a fan of Blue Dream, and I absolutely hate cookies. But that blue cookies is fucking fire. Like it's one of.
You know what's funny, man? Is that it's another one of those strains that, like, for what it is, it does well. Right? It's a huge. Once again, I worked in a huge commercial grow that we grew Blue Dream spears that were as long as my leg.
Right.
And I'm not joking. Like 3 a light, they easily did 3+ a light with it all day long.
Oh yeah.
But once again, it's just a strain that's almost better in a hybrid because it brings all the best shit to the table.
Right.
God, we ended up having this conversation anyway. We were going to save this for the hour. That's the blow of it. We can't blow this whole conversation. This is the whole, we're literally just got suckered back into the Blue Dream conversation. We're going to have the whole, for anybody who's not following, if you have a friend who's addicted to Blue Dream, a friend who wants to argue with you every time you're like, yeah, I just don't get it. It's not that great. Tell them to go to Closet Blue Dream Lovers on Facebook. It still exists. One of these days, it's going to be 100,000 people there just because there's that many people out there that have a friend that's into Blue Dream. But it's a joke group we started ages ago, and in the trolling days of the internet.
Yeah.
Back when you could still get away with trolling on Facebook without getting blocked every 2 minutes.
And for 30 days. Yep.
So I haven't had a ban in years.
I haven't had one in a while either, but I haven't really been posting that much on Facebook.
No, I don't go there anymore.
Yeah, no.
Like at a certain point, the only way I could get over it was to just unfollow everybody I knew in the weed world, and now it's literally just friends and family. Yeah, because dude, it's just I don't have that thing that's like turn the other cheek.
Right.
Like I wasn't born with that. And that's a problem because there are certain things in life where you go, well, you can't fight about everything. Like you have to just let shit slide sometimes. And in infinite wisdom, you realize this, but I think we've all, maybe said a few things that were a little hot at times.
Absolutely.
And Facebook is the internet hate machine.
Yeah.
That's what Facebook has done well, is monetizing people's hate.
For sure. It's such a cesspool of ridiculousness. Yeah.
And it's the last place anybody's buying anything.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole notion that you're going to advertise there, or you're going to get people's attention, or 90% of the ads that I see there are like cheap Chinese garbage that I'm like, who gives them their credit card number?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Definitely know people that have been scammed through all those fucking Facebook Marketplace ads.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, that stuff flies all day. I've seen ads for weed on Facebook, but on Instagram, you can't post a picture of ganja without getting flagged.
Yep. Did you join Burner's social club app?
I tried so hard to keep it straight. No, I haven't yet.
Did, and it sucked.
Here's the thing, bro. You want to talk about why everybody keeps putting up with Instagram's bullshit? Why we're still talking on Instagram right now? It's because there's 400 billion people on this platform.
Yep.
There's not on Burner's platform. Regardless of what he lets you get away with, when he starts to put the numbers up, then it's a platform that people are going to be willing to advertise on.
Right.
That's all we're doing here. Don't get it tangled. Don't get it twisted. We're advertising. The reason that Instagram hates weed pages is because you're able to advertise without paying them money, and they hate that.
Yep.
They hate that. They want their cut. They want it now. They're not playing about it. They'll take it straight out of your credit card. How can you pay?
Yep.
But the problem is they can't take it from one weed person and not another weed person. So they can't take weed money from people in Colorado, but not on the East Coast somewhere. So they just say, well, we can't take any of the weed money. So all of you guys can post content here for a little while, but eventually we're gonna throw your shit in the trash.
Yeah. So
what? There's 4 billion people on Instagram, so here we are having another discussion on Instagram for what it's worth.
I tried to go to Twitter, and I was on there for like 2 weeks, and then they banned me from that shit too.
Yeah, man, see, and that's just what I said. Like, once I started a business, like, a lot of that had to kind of chill. So, like, yeah.
For sure.
It comes with age, I suppose, too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do better by the Lord.
There you go. You're a dad now. You gotta grow up a little bit.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, that happened swiftly too, man. Like, that was another one that just change happened so quickly, and it's just, you think you got life figured out, even at the best of times, and then something happens, and the next thing you know is like you got a toddler and he's yelling at you, and it's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. Yeah, it's awesome. He's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, maybe one day I'll hand him all the seeds and I'll be like, here you go, man. It's your turn. Like, you paint the picture,
right?
It's out there to be painted. I always joke these are all just crayons. I'm just coloring with crayons, and I hope one day somebody takes one of my crayons and goes and paints a masterpiece. That's the best thing you could ask as a breeder. If I don't paint that masterpiece, I hope it's out there for somebody to enjoy.
Yep.
What do you do?
I've always loved your attitude on that too, especially when those people in Colorado that were bitching about someone making a cross with some seeds that they made or some shit like that. Like, what did you make them for?
Yeah, man. Here's the root of that whole situation, without like digging up a whole can of shit I don't feel like talking about. That was one of those things where, man, like, people pay crazy money for cuts,
right? And then
they have to be super douchebags because they think they're the only people with those cuts. But the reality is, every grow I worked in, commercial grow that I worked in Colorado, had every one of those cuts. And now, as far as I know, everybody in the world has all of those strains.
Pretty much.
So it's like, I don't really know what you're so angry about.
Yeah.
Your blood pressure has to be horrible to be so angry all the fucking time, especially about something you can't control. Like once you sell seeds for $300 a pack,
yeah,
people are going to do whatever they want with them. I never took a cut. Understand one thing about me. I don't mess with cuts.
right.
I don't, like from outside people. I learned that lesson early on, so I don't take cuts in. So like, it's just a thing with me.
Yeah.
So like, I don't have that problem of like, is it the right cut? Is this the V cut? Is this no, this is a seed I popped, and it's amazing because I ran it and I've compared it to everything I've seen, and this is what you want.
Yep.
And so it's like, dude, so many of those cuts are in every dispensary in Colorado and California and Washington, 38 states now, that to get super butthurt about anybody having anything at this point,
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I was going to say that when we first started talking about how everyone was so uptight about not taking cuts out of their grows or having these cuts or whatever, but everyone in Colorado had the same fucking cuts. Like it was
yeah. Almost every grow that I worked in, aside from a few cuts, and I don't think anybody had anything unique other than stuff that I popped at grows, seeds that I brought into the grow.
right.
The wife's telling me we got 5 minutes. Just a heads up. Everybody go follow at Green Star Grower on my page. This dude's an OG. We're going to be back. We'll probably do a pre-roll hour. We're going to figure out how to do it. We're going to do a pre-roll hour. We're going to do a Blue Dream hour. Like, they're just hours that do themselves. Like, the more we talk about it, the more it's like, dude, we almost got suckered into the Blue Dream conversation, joking about having the Blue Dream conversation. But yeah, and so if anything here struck you, please share it. Go find somebody that cares. Share it with them. You can find these on YouTube. We're going to drop them all over the internet. Go to www.terpene.com. Go get some seeds. Just buy some seeds, dank-ass seeds. If you need a flavor recommendation, hit me up. I'll get you set up. We'll get you some dank. Yeah. Get you out of the mids. Get you growing some dank. But yeah, man, like we seriously, Drew, it's one of those where like these conversations were intended to be just two OGs just talking the shit, because there's so many of these conversations that you and I have that we've had 1,000 times, that growers, commercial growers, just heads between us when we're together. Right. The conversations that we have aren't the conversations I see people having about weed. Yeah. It's like most people haven't seen the inside of 140,000 square foot indoor grow, right? Because that's a pretty rare thing, Sure. And it's like the people that have are usually the people that don't get the fucking credit for all the work that goes down there. People that work their fucking ass off, average people that just work hard, come in every day, do a job, and just love weed. And that's why they put up with all the bullshit. And that's the one thing that I think we've both seen a good bit of in the commercial weed industry, is just people treated like they're not valuable. They're just a commodity. We'll get another one. Yep. There's always another kid out there that'll work for $12 an hour if you won't do it for 13, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like I said, one of the things that I wanted this to be was people to see the other side of the industry. And, whether that be the parts of the seed business you don't see, the parts of the extract industry that you don't see, the parts of the commercial weed industry that you don't see, there should be some conversations about some of this shit that happens in some of these, especially in newly legal states where they haven't really tightened up the regulations.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. It's a lot of people that shouldn't be making money off this plant that are making money off the plant. A lot of people that should be in better positions that are not.
Do you have a website? Do you have something other than the Green Star, like at Green Star Grower here on IG?
Yeah, greenstargrower.com. There's not too much on there. It's just a little kind of brief history of my time in the cannabis industry. If anyone's thinking about building a large-scale cultivation facility and needs help with design or SOPs, please shoot me an email, greenstargrower.com. Be more than happy.
Homie, build some grows. I'm not fucking with you. Homeboy knows ground up all the headache shit you don't want to deal with in a large commercial grow, man. Like, when it comes time for a build-out, that's the person to call. Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate you.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. One of the nicest looking grows that I fucking worked in Colorado was the one we worked in together, which was the one you ran.
Yeah.
So, you know, absolutely. Well, dog, we got about a minute left. I just want to say thank you, man. It's been awesome. I'm glad we finally got back on a good page and got to talking again. And seriously, we need to do more FaceTime and do more of these where we're just putting the wheels to the road and telling people what's going on. But yeah, pre-roll hours got to be coming up. We got to do an hour on pre-roll, and we got to do an hour on Blue Dream. Like it's that's got to happen
for sure,
just for the cause.
Yeah.
All right, dog. We got 7 seconds. Anything